Where's the EQ on the reverb? Delay time? Delay. Turn up the feedback. Turn up the feedback. Wait. Pan the condenser to the left and the dynamic to the right. Lower the threshold. Raise the output. Wait. Set the frequency range. High pass. Welcome to the Lady Audio Radio Show. For this week's interview, we welcome Scott Lawlor. Scott is a recording genius who creates soundscapes that capture emotions unlike any other ambient musician I've ever heard. His music can evoke emotions that crumble down into horrifying chambers, and yet other works can soar to the outskirts of the universe to give perspective, almost like sensing the overview effect that some astronauts claim to feel when they're floating in outer space. Scott, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity to be on your program.
I'm glad that you took the time to join me tonight. So I'll just go ahead and dive right into the questions here. What drew you into writing and recording ambient music?
Well, it's a long story. My interest in music actually started back when I was a child. Um, Being in a family of, well, three brothers and a sister, they were all interested in football and baseball and other sports. My dad was a coach in Little League, and I am blind, so, and I went to some of the games with them, but I never really had any interest in any of that. So I would just usually stay home and listen to music and read books. And so I just was always interested in music. When I was a kid, I would make sound collages with record players and tape recorders and things like that. And I got my first synthesizer when I was 20, 23, maybe something like that. It was 1990, maybe I was 24. And at the time, I was going to be a novelist, actually, because I got a double major in English and psychology at the bachelor level. And after I got the keyboard, I just started playing around and felt that I put together sounds better than words. So I just started creating music, and the first things that I created, which I'll probably release eventually once I get them digitized from cassette, were more new age melodic tracks inspired by people like Suzanne Shawnee and those Liz Story, George Winston, and those kinds of people. But what drew me into ambient was when I got a bootleg copy of a sleep concert by Robert Rich in the mid 90s, and I listened to it, and I would often fall asleep to it. And a friend of mine, she also got turned on to that, so I made her a copy of it. And then I decided to just try my hand at space music myself. And my first album, called Time's Escape, was recorded in 1997 on cassette. Then I digitized it to Wave back in, I think it was 2012, adjusted some EQ and some other things. And that was one of my first releases on the We're All Ghosts label in 2013.
What's the name of the label again?
We're All Ghosts. It's
Oh,
WEREALLGHOSTS.bandcamp.com.
okay.
It's run by Thomas Matty out of Scotland. And I've got a couple of releases on there. My Drone Excursion series actually started out on that label, but then I
Okay.
moved it over to Bandcamp.
That's where I've heard that Thomas's name before because I was like, what's that name again? And just now when you mentioned it, I recognized that. So, yeah, I'll have to check that out, and I'll post that link in the show notes too,
Okay.
because yeah, they really did a good choice by having you on the label. That's for sure.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. And then, what do you use now to record your music?
I have a pretty simple setup. I've got a Roland FA08, a computer, Windows computer, and SoundForge and Audacity. I don't use any digital audio workstation. I don't use Pro Tools. Um, I don't use Sonar. I was thinking about trying to learn how to use Reaper, but I'm just too interested in creating music right now. So
Yeah.
I don't, I'm not one who plays around with a lot of technology, except for VSTs. I use a lot of those. Use a lot of VST plugins,
Okay.
free ones that I can download from the internet that are actually relatively accessible for me and the screen readers that I use.
Yeah. No, that's cool because what was I gonna say? It's like well, I was talking with a mastering engineer just recently, and he also likes to record out of the box and doesn't really use a DAW except for the mixing and mastering stage. So it's cool that you just like you kind of bypass that.
Yeah, and it's simpler and it's less things to break. And
Yeah.
I don't use software synthesizers because when you get involved with software synthesizers, MIDI controllers, and sound cards and all this other stuff, it's just there's too many moving parts, and if one thing breaks, then you're out of luck.
Yeah, yeah. So, with the drone excursions that are on your Bandcamp, how are those created?
Um, those a lot of those were actually done with an older keyboard that I had that I bought off Craigslist a couple of years ago, the Ensoniq TS12, because I originally started out with the Ensoniq SQ1, and that keyboard was good to me until around 2003. I took a long break from music from around um, 1997 till 2013, with a couple of exceptions where I played now and then, because I couldn't decide what keyboard I wanted. And then later on I got married and kids and all that other stuff and moved around because I had jobs and things like that. But yeah, for the drone excursions, a lot of them were done on the Ensoniq TS12. And then when I got the Roland, I completed the series on that synth. And I use for those, I use SoundForge and Audacity to make those drone excursions.
Okay. Okay. And then how do you get them online? Because I remember when we were talking before, you were saying that some of them were performed live.
Not the drone excursions; those are all not live. There's other stuff that is all performed live on the internet.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay. Okay. And then,
and
oh, go ahead.
the that material, I just hit my encoders for broadcasting, and then I just start playing, and it just transmits over the internet, and then I'm recording it at the same time in SoundForge or Audacity, whichever one I want to use.
Oh, okay. Okay, now it makes sense. Thank you for explaining that because I was wondering how that worked. Um, and then, how do the drone excursions differ from your albums? Because I'm I'm guessing that an album with a name has more of an idea or emotion attached to it, but I could be wrong. But I just wanted to ask you how those differ.
For the most part, that's correct. Most of my albums, I like to do a lot of conceptual things. A lot of my music is inspired by uh, classic literature or space, or in recent times, more socio-political events that are happening. So it seems like recently my music is intersecting politics pretty regularly. Um, but no, the drone excursions are just 73 to 78-minute tracks. And the hardest thing with those is coming up with a title for them.
Hmm,
That's why it takes me so long to release them, because I don't know what to call them.
I
And I
see.
don't want to just call them Drone Excursion 001 because that's boring. And by the way, the inspiration for the drone excursions came from Cousin Silas, who is also on the World Ghost label, and his series called Dronescapes. I think it's up to like 30, 39 or 40 titles already.
Oh, wow.
And so I had the inspiration from him to do my own Dronescape series, but I didn't want to call it Dronescape because that was already taken. So I chose Drone Excursion. And the series actually has 100 installations.
Wow.
and it's going to take me a while to release those. And I told somebody by the time I get finished releasing those, depending on the schedule, I'm going to be like 90 when they're all out. And he's called me the oldest droner in town.
That would be funny. Oldest droner in town.
Yeah, the oldest droner in town. Yeah, that'd be me.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
speaking of those emotional soundscapes, you have a new album out that's called Political Correctness and ISIS Are Malignant Cancers Undermining All Social Cultures. And I really wanted to talk about this because, for one, it's fascinating and
And it's a pretty controversial title.
exactly. And uh, and just to let the audience know, I will include the liner notes in the description of this podcast so that you can read what this album is about. So, what is the story behind the creation of this album?
Um, Now I saw that question when you posted me the questions for the interview, and that one's a little difficult, might be a little difficult for me to answer. Um, Back after the Orlando shootings, I was pretty affected by that because that happened pretty close to where my parents live. They live in Ocala, Florida, which is about an hour and a half, which I guess it isn't so close. But when you think of other terrorist attacks that have happened in places like Brussels and Paris and stuff like that, when you talk about Orlando, it's right here.
Mm-hmm.
In California, that's San Bernardino. I don't know how far that is from or close to where you are,
It's a
because
few hours. Yeah.
you're in Lake Tahoe, but still the proximity factor is there, and it's a pretty close occurrence, and it probably made you feel a little uneasy knowing that something of that magnitude could happen in closer proximity to where you are.
Yeah.
And so I wrote my album called The Pain of Being Fractured, which was more of a an album in solidarity for the victims of the Orlando shooting, much like my album last year called Could It Be That We Have Forgotten How to Love was done in response to the Paris attacks. And then the more I just read about ISIS and what they've done and what they continue to do around the world, I mean, gosh, they destroy works of art, they destroy cathedrals, all these buildings. And every time I read this stuff, my blood pressure just goes up and I just want to rip through the screen and strangle these guys.
Yeah.
Um, so I got really enraged at them and also the politically correct crowd because, you know, I don't want to get a whole lot into our president and all that because I do enough of that on Twitter and Facebook, but a lot of the policies and the political correctness that have been in play, in terms of leading from behind and creating a vacuum for these things to happen, that has been one of the what I believe is one of the essential ingredients in allowing these things to go on the way they are. So politically correct, this whole notion of political correctness, and then ISIS on top of it. At first, it was two albums, um, but then I thought about it and I thought they're pretty connected. So I decided to just make it one long 2.5 hour album over the span of 10 tracks.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just, I'm just, I'm tired of all the political correctness and I was just enraged at just all of it. So I just made this really dark, apocalyptic, I guess, pretty angry album.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it'll stir up any kind of controversy. I can't imagine it will. I'm not a celebrity. I'm not that popular. I'm not probably on anyone's radar. But, my muse and where I go, sometimes I go into some dark places, and if that happens, then that's just what happens.
Yeah, it's there are definitely some dark um, realms that are visited in that album, and and the names of the songs are really long.
Hmm.
For example, the one, and I'll just read this one out loud because I like the I like the title of this one. Political correctness is the black horse of death by which terrorism freely rides in to destroy and abolish innocence. What is that Can you describe that feeling a little bit more?
I don't really know if I can describe the feeling except to say that I feel that political correctness and the unwillingness for this administration to really stand up to the ideology that these people represent, that has given these people a free pass to just do whatever they want.
Mm. Yeah.
And there were a lot of drums in that track. And, I was listening to it the other day, and the way it starts out with all these drums, and they're actually going through some delays and stuff, it actually sounds like a group of roving horses going to invade a country or whatever.
Yeah.
And basically, I just, the drums, I use the drums on the Roland keyboard, and I put them through some delays, and I think I even did some mixing where I mix them into different channels before I did the delay, so they were like delays of stereo. I don't remember exactly how I did it all, but I do a lot of stuff with delays and things like that
And
in that album.
what were the drum sounds that you used?
Just different drum patches on the Roland. I'm not sure what they're called.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
usually I don't use drums in my work, so that makes this album a little more unusual.
Yeah, it was definitely kind of took me by surprise. I think it was the fifth or sixth song um, that kind of introduced the drums, and there was that snare sound, and I really liked that snare sound in there. I think it did kind of have that driving effect to it. Like that was the feeling I got from it.
Yeah, I think I used, there's a VST plugin that I use called Truck 2.1. It's a free plugin. I think it's TRUK. I don't remember who makes it, but it's got a lot of really cool presets.
Mm.
And so after I finish recording something, if I want to add an effect to that piece from that plugin, I just go through and sample all the effects and figure out which one I like. It's like 130 different options in there.
Yeah,
It can
yeah,
take a while.
yeah. Um, for the 10th song, What is the ninth circle of hell and the 72 verminous swine? I don't know what those terms mean.
Well, the ninth circle of hell is a reference to Dante, his Inferno, where hell is divided up into nine circles. And actually, in the ninth circle of hell is Judas, Lucifer himself. I can't remember who else, but Dante put a lot of popes in hell, which actually got him exiled from wherever he was at the time. That book created some quite a big controversy for him. And the 72 verminous swine, the notion that in the Islam religion, and I'm not, this album doesn't castigate the Islam religion, so I want people to understand that it's not a direct affront to the religion. It's a statement against the extremists who twist and pervert, whatever the religion believes to their own ends of destruction and annihilation. So I want to make sure that people are clear on that. But in Islam, they believe that when you die, when you go to heaven, you get 72 virgins. So I just took that and had a little bit of fun with it, I suppose, and made it 72 verminous swine because I believe that they don't eat pork and stuff like that. So I just took it and went the other way with it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, it definitely, I think it was the sixth song that the album really started to hit me.
Hmm.
And then when I read the title of it, May ISIS be avenged for barbarism inflicted on innocents of the world by the ghosts of their victims who scream perpetual blood. And I was like, ah! like it really goes into some dark places. And,
Yeah.
you know, I think that that's really difficult to do in any genre of music, to actually have a feeling and to get it across. And I think that's one of the things that sets art apart from, like, or maybe I could just say good art apart from bad art, is that
Hmm.
good art, it gives you an emotion, a sense of something. It evokes something.
Hmm.
And bad art just doesn't seem to capture that. And then there's stuff like pop art, which is, it's just fun or whatever. But I think that,
Bubblegum. The old Beatles songs were bubblegum.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. But I just wanted to thank you so much for creating such a powerful collection of work. And I hope that it will reach other people on a really deep level like it did for me. And just, thank you for sharing your thoughts about the subject and, the subject matter for the album.
Well, you're welcome, and I hope my presentation was concise. Sometimes I feel a little bit, I don't know if nervous is the right word, but just not exactly sure what to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's completely understandable because with some of the actions that have been taken, it's hard to find any words to, yeah, it's just hard to find words.
Yeah, I've got another album coming out, which is a response to the more current events that have been happening, with police brutality and all these other political groups coming out. An album is called, what's that one called? Elegy for a Fractured World. Um, it's around 100 minutes. I'll probably release it pretty soon. I don't know when exactly, but part of it. I'm trying to get some people's permission to use their quotes from a book. have a hard time coming up with titles, so a lot of times I go to literature or Wikipedia, just look up a subject,
Hmm.
or in this case, this dude's book that I found, which is a pretty cool book. So I use some quotes from it. So I want to clear all that usage with him before I just go releasing the thing.
That's cool.
Yeah,
It's a cool way to go about to find titles.
yeah. Because if I just try to do it by myself, I'm terrible at making decisions. I'm a Libra. That's one of our traits. So we're bad at making decisions.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But on a lighter note, I just wanted to touch base on another work of yours that I really like, and it's called Polar Night on Titan. And
Oh, Johnny
Titan,
Darko.
yeah, and
Yeah.
Titan, if and nobody knows this yet, probably they do, but it's one of the moons of Saturn, and that's my favorite planet because Sun Ra lives there now, and
I haven't actually heard a lot of Sun Ra. I've heard some, but not very much.
I love Sun Ra, and the only way for me to listen to him, and I'm guilty of listening to it on YouTube, but it's got to be on vinyl. I mean, there's just no comparison. You just got to put on that record and just sit back with some nice speakers and listen.
I think John Zorn, one of his influences was Sun Ra also.
Yeah, I think Sun Ra influenced a lot of people.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what I've heard. I'll have to try to check out some of his music.
So, what's the story behind that piece? You mentioned that you collaborated with, is it Dronny Darko?
Yep,
Okay.
Johnny Darko. He's from the Ukraine, and we've actually collaborated on another album from a with a project that I don't think has gotten a whole lot of mention because I'm terrible at promoting myself. I'm not very good with that at all. I need to hire someone to do that for me. I need to hire a publicist. Um, but the other project that I have is called The Vega Chronicles, and it's at thevegachronicles.bandcamp.com, and it's a 24-hour installation done with is it 16, 15 or 16 different collaborators from all over the world. And it's a the notes about that are pretty extensive. So if you go to that website, you can read up on what the project is all about and everything. But it took quite a while to get that done with that many different people. Um, but no, Johnny Darko, I sent him the basic drone that I did, and the drone was actually done with using a glass of water and some ice. Because on the Disquiet Hundo, I don't know if you're familiar with that,
No.
but there's something called the Disquiet Hundo. It's Jundo, and every week they've got an assignment, and the assignment is based on some very restrictive elements. So it's a springboard for creativity using um, I don't know how they put it exactly, but there's very strict parameters that you have to adhere to create these different pieces that they want you to create every week. And I took part in it, I think maybe a couple of times. But the one that I did originally was with the ice because I love winter. I love ambience with a winter theme to it. And I thought I'm going to do this thing with ice. So I just recorded myself with a glass of water and some ice cubes, sloshing them around. And actually microwave the water a little bit so it was warm so that you could hear the ice cracking in the water and stuff like that. And I sent him the first piece, which I think was maybe a minute and a half or 2 minutes. And then I decided I wanted to do something longer with it. So I resampled it. I pitch changed it by, I don't know how many octaves, 4 or 5 octaves. Did some Paul stretching on it and some other things. And I came up with this 70, I think it was a 75-minute drone just from that 1.5 minutes of, well, no, actually, the ice in the glass was maybe 30 seconds. And so I sent that to Johnny Darko, and he added a bunch of things to it. I can't remember what he did exactly, but I sent it back. I sent it to the Petroglyph label, which was run by Rune Martinson and Oystein Jorgensen. And I've had a couple of collaborations with Oystein as well. And they put it out. And then a couple of years later, I released it on my Bandcamp.
Okay. And that was going to be my next question was what did you use to get the sounds for it? But I wanted to ask you, so with that glass of water with the ice, what type of microphone did you use?
I use my iPhone.
No way.
Yep, just the iPhone.
Oh my gosh.
Yep, and I just ran it through a whole bunch of plugins in SoundForge and Audacity.
Okay.
I think that was done and originally done in 2014, if I remember right. I enjoy manipulating samples. I've got an album called Symphony for Prepared Dryer, and I took a lead from the idea of John Cage with his prepared piano. Um, where he would put nuts and bolts on the piano strings and do put all this other hardware in the piano and then play it, stuff like
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
And so we were getting rid of the dryer and the washer because they were old, they've outlived their usefulness pretty much. So I was like, I'm gonna just throw different items in the dryer and record what they sound like. So I used things like shoes, brick fragments, metal bowls. Um, I wanted to use Cindy's pipe wrench, but she strongly objected. And the album actually has the documentary for the Symphony for Prepared Dryer, where you can actually hear me running some ideas by her, and she uses some profanity and says, "No, you're not gonna ruin my pipe wrench. You're not gonna put glass in the dryer."
Yeah.
All these other things. I ended up putting like 208 coins in the dryer, a bunch of silverware, coat hangers, alphabet blocks from the kids, all these different crazy things. And I just recorded a little section of each of them. And then at the very end, you can hear me and Matt. At the time, he was maybe 12 or 13. We just threw everything in the dryer. Brick
Wow.
fragments, bowls, shoes, everything. And I just ran it for about a minute. And then I took all those recordings, which I use the iPhone to record all that stuff. And then I just had fun with it doing what I like to do when I mangle different samples and stuff like that.
Wow. So when you're doing that, it sounds like you are fairly pleased with the sound that you're getting or with the microphone on the iPhone, or are you not satisfied with it until you process it?
I like to process everything because the iPhone it records in mono unless you have binaural mics or whatever, and I don't have those yet, and I don't know if I will because I don't really do a lot of field recordings,
Hmm.
um, so I probably won't get binaural mics, but I I mix things with a little bit of a delay from each other on different channels, which gives it the stereo effect.
Okay.
And then after I do that, I run it through different VSTs and things like that. until I get the sound that I want.
Okay. And then do you try to match those sounds with a particular feeling, or do you let the sound kind of evoke a feeling and then try to come up with a name for it?
In the Symphony for Prepared Dryer, there aren't any feelings. That was just a random experiment. But a lot of other albums where I've done sample manipulation, mostly from the One Sample Dare challenge on ambientonline.org, I will I'll get the original sample, then I'll create my entry for that week. I actually came in pretty late to the series. I think I started with sample 22, and then I decided to go back and read and do the first 21, even though I couldn't submit my works because those threads are already closed. But I just wanted to do them anyway. So I did, I think most of them. I think maybe there are a couple that I didn't do. But after I create the the track, when it's all done, I'll go back and listen to it, and I'll come up with a title which will be created by whatever images I have going through my mind when I'm listening to the playback.
Whoa. I'm just tripping out that you do all of this like really great work with just, some simple equipment because it really does sound like, and I guess it goes to show that you don't need like every single plug-in and you don't need every single microphone. Um, but the thing is like if you're going for a particular feeling and then you get that feeling and you get that feeling you put it across to other people and other people pick up on it. I mean, obviously people are picking up on it because you have a lot of followers on Bandcamp,
Yeah.
and I know that's really tough to do too. So it's just amazing to me, like for instance, because I've been listening to so much more music these days doing this podcast, and I'll listen to stuff. I'm like, yeah, that's really good. I like that, and I'll go for it, and I'll buy it or whatever. But then there are other pieces of work that I come across. I'm like, wow, that's really getting out there, or they're really hitting something there, and then it's like sometimes the people do have a lot of equipment and to get those particular feelings, and then other people don't.
Hmm.
And it always amazes me, how much we can do with so little. Like,
Yeah.
for instance, and everyone always, says, "Oh, the old blues guys," but it's so true. You listen to those old recordings, and man, they are in the groove. They are in that feeling, and they're putting it out there. And all they have is a crappy microphone and a crappy guitar in their voice.
Yep.
Yeah,
And if you listen to them on 78, hopefully they don't skip.
right. If you can find a record player that plays 78.
I never had any 78s, but I know what they feel like. Because when I was a kid, I would always go to the record stores and talk to the guys in the record stores and just go through all the used collections and find all these really cool things. And it was really fun to discover stuff that way.
Yeah.
Um, Nowadays, you can do it online too, but it just doesn't have the same appeal. It doesn't have the same kind of vibe as, when you walk into the store and the guy who's in there knows all about music. You can talk with him about music for hours, and they can give you ideas of what to listen to based on what you're talking about. You can't get that. You can get that a little bit online maybe these days with social networks,
Yeah.
but it's more fun in person. And I remember I went to a Borders once, and I said, can I have somebody help me look around for audiobooks? Because, I can't see the books myself, so I need someone to help me look around. And then one guy was like, well, what do you want to buy? I'm like, I don't know. I won't know until I find it. And he just took all the fun out of the whole search and discovery process. But then there was this other woman over there who was really good at helping me find things and recommending different books based on what I had already read and what my interests were and stuff like that. So it's always a it's always a bit of a random event, I suppose,
Yeah.
when you go looking for help with that kind of stuff from customer service.
Yeah, I miss going into record stores. I ran away from home at least once to go to a record store in Hollywood
Oh wow.
just to go to the record store because a friend of mine said I was really into goth rock at the time and trying to get into punk, I guess. And a friend of mine said, "You haven't heard Killing Joke?" And I said, "No, I don't know who they are." And he was like, "Well, you should go and, you know, go and get some Killing Joke." And so I was like, "Okay." So I scrounged up a little bit of money that I had in my room, and I got on a Greyhound bus and I went to Hollywood, which was about, I don't know, 4 hours away.
Oh wow.
And yeah, and I
Did you at
went.
least leave a note for your parents?
No, I didn't. I
Oh,
just totally ran away. Um,
funny.
and I came back that night, but actually, no,
And
I
you're like,
didn't come back that night. I spent the night at my friend's house down there, and then I came back the next day. But
and then when you came back, they said, "You're grounded, go to your room." And you were like, "Okay, I've got my music anyway, so I don't even care." My parents used to do that to me.
exactly,
I'd say, "Send me to my
exactly.
room. I don't care. I got my music."
Yep. But going into that record store, I mean, I still remember it to this day. I remember other record stores too, but this particular event was really special because it meant my first real album of like the true underground.
Yeah.
And this was Killing Joke, so it wasn't just like any band. And I was there and I was looking through the Killing Joke records, and the guy came up to me and he had tattoos and earrings all up in his face and everything. And I was at that time, that wasn't so common as it is now, and
Hmm.
I was frightened. But he said, "I'm coming over here because I noticed that you're looking at Killing Joke." And it was like, ooh, she's looking at Killing Joke. And he's I said, "I don't know who they are, and a friend recommended them, and I need to get into Killing Joke." And he recommended an album called Brighter Than a Thousand Suns.
Okay.
And I got that record, and like I said, I came home and I put that on, and I haven't gone back ever since. just it's just it took me on a trip that I had never experienced before, and the sound of those guitars and the sound of those keyboards on that album just really struck me on a deep level. And even though I didn't understand a lot of the topics they were talking about, it still it still struck something in me that I would just sit there with my Walkman and in my headphones and just listen on the way to school. And it was just one of those things. Like I think that there is this new generation that is, I wish that they could experience that too.
Yeah.
But I guess there's going to have to be something else to come along to kind of fill that, hopefully. I was talking with another guest who is really into vinyl, and he has a really great website for getting started with vinyl. And apparently, according to market research, the industry is growing. It's slowly but surely growing every single year.
Yeah, I had
So,
heard that. And one of my friend Donovan Ainsworth, who's a really great friend of mine. We've been friends since 2003. And one of the first things that we listened to together was a bootleg of a live Within Temptation concert
hmm,
from the Waldrock in 2002, I think it was. And man, that thing was compressed, but it sounded really good.
hmm,
Um, but he asked me if I was ever going to if I'd ever thought about putting anything out on vinyl.
Hmm.
And I'm like, dude, do you know how much it's going to cost for me to do that? The
Yeah.
wife is not going to be okay with that. She's an accountant. She knows the value, she knows the cost of everything and the value of nothing. I
Yeah.
remember, I remember, I was talking with the guys over at Sweetwater, the Sweetwater rep that I deal with over there, and he recommended that I get the Access virus. And he said, that's the Ferrari of synthesizers. And when I told my wife that, she said, does it have a Ferrari price tag? And I guess it does. It costs around 3 grand for that
Oy, oy.
keyboard. But I still want to get one. It's just got a lot of knobs and buttons. It's got like 42 knobs or something crazy. And I could have a lot of fun in real time doing real time performances with that, more than the Roland, because the Roland's only got 6 knobs. And I haven't quite learned what all the effects are and how to assign the knobs to different effects and things like that. So what I can do with it is a little bit limited, but it still works pretty well.
That's cool. Yeah, I just barely started getting into synthesizers, and I don't know what a lot of the terms mean, like LFO and all that. But I'm looking forward to learning because I have a new MIDI controller, and there are a bunch of different sounds in Logic, and also with the software that the MIDI controller came with, and there are just so many sounds, and I really want to learn how to manipulate them a lot better than I do know how, because right now it's just kind of like, what does this do? What does this do? And just, but if I knew what some of the terms meant, then I would be able to really get in there and go, oh, okay, I need to shape it like this, and I want to shape it like that over there, and have those terms down. So,
But on the other hand, the sense of awe, wonder, and discovery at not knowing what something does, but finding out what it does in real time when it happens is pretty cool too.
you're right. You are
Yep.
right about that.
Yep. The awe of discovery, something that I wonder if we're losing that in our society a little bit too. Because,
Maybe, yeah.
the
Yeah.
kids don't, a lot of the kids, they don't play outside these days anymore. They play on their little iPads and stuff like that. And sure, there's some discovery in there. And yeah, I mean, they don't climb trees because they're going to be afraid they're going to be sued by a neighbor if they fall out of a tree or whatever.
Right.
The discovery is gone. I mean, when I was a kid, I was climbing trees. I climbed trees. I rode a bicycle down a hill. Probably wasn't a very good idea because it was a pretty steep hill up to a garage, and yeah, so I'm this blind guy in this bicycle with a banana seat. So I get up to the top of the hill. I'm like, all right, let me see how fast I can get this thing going down the hill. So I pedal like crazy, forgetting that at the bottom of the hill it's gonna be flat and I'm gonna crash and burn.
Oh,
And so I crashed and I got pretty banged up. But
man.
still, for that 20 or 30 seconds or whatever it was pretty fun.
Yeah.
Kind of like
Yeah.
when I jumped out of an airplane. That was pretty fun too.
Oh, you've jumped out of an airplane before?
Yep, I've done it twice.
Oh my gosh.
I remember
That's,
the first time we had to jump from, well, we were originally going to jump at 13,000 feet, but we had to go up to 16,000 because there were clouds. So I was
oh,
jumping through the clouds, which was an interesting feeling.
whoa.
And the second time I jumped, it was such a small plane, we had to go out of the plane backwards and then flip over um, when we left the plane. And the guy tapped me on the shoulder so I knew when to pull the ripcord for the parachute.
Oh my gosh.
And I had a video of that too. I don't know what happened to the video, but that was a pretty exhilarating experience. It's very loud when you're falling 120 miles an hour
Is it, and
from
do you lose your breath?
no.
Okay.
And jumping out of an airplane, it's not like, like when you jump into a pool. It's not like that at all. It's almost like you're falling on this giant pillow of air. I mean, you're falling really, really fast until you pull the parachute, and then it's a quiet ride down to the ground.
Ooh.
But it's a pretty cool, fun experience.
Yeah, that's something that I haven't had the nerve to do. It was just a really big, huge feat for me just last year, getting on a ski lift and going to the top of a ski hill. that I wasn't really afraid of skiing or having skis on or anything. It was being on that lift, and because I guess I'm kind of afraid of heights. But I wanted to get back to
Get
the
back to the
music a little
music.
bit here, but I wanted to ask you those experiences of like jumping out of an airplane and stuff. Um, do you incorporate some of those feelings into any of your pieces?
Actually, no. Um, I haven't really done that. But like snow, when you mentioned snow and skiing, it brought up an album that I recorded with Rebecca Hillgraves a couple of years ago called Recollecting the Snow, which was an album based on I think it was a true story about a guy who he got hypothermia because he was going up to the mountains to visit with some friends of his to go on a ski ride, skiing and at a log cabin and some other things. So his car broke down and he left the vehicle and he thought he could just ski his way up to the cabin.
Oh,
And so he puts on the snow boots and everything, and he starts going up in the snow, and you can hear the footsteps of him climbing the mountain on the skis and everything. And then at the crest of the mountain where it starts to go downhill, he starts to ski. And in the middle of going down the mountain, his skis hit a log, so he tumbles and falls into the snow, loses a glove, and he starts getting hypothermia. And the whole album is based on his experiences, and it's
oh.
got her narration, and I put in a bunch of different sound effects and stuff like that. And she played it online, and one of the other still stream DJs was in the room, and he said, "Man, this is making me feel so cold. I have to wait till summer to listen to this thing." It was like sometime in February when she played it on her show.
So you really like winter. You mentioned that earlier.
Yeah, my wife says that I like the idea of winter because I don't really go out of the house a whole lot.
Okay.
And part of the reason I don't go out of the house a lot is because there's no public transportation around here at all. I mean, there's Lyft and Uber and all that, but I haven't used those yet. But I live in a residential community, so there's nowhere to go. I mean, there are neighbors and their houses, but there's no store to walk to. When I lived in Ohio, everything was really close.
Hmm.
I would walk, you know, I would walk to the library, I would walk to Goodwill, I would walk to the bar to have lunch. I would go to my therapist to get counseling. I would go back to the bar and then, and then go back home and you know stuff. But everything was so close. But here in Texas, everything is so far away and so far apart. It's weird.
Yeah, yeah. Texas is like that. When I was there, I have some family in San Antonio, and yeah,
Oh,
everything's
we
really
lived
far
there.
apart.
Yeah, we lived in San Antonio for a while. The nice thing about San Antonio is there were no mosquitoes.
I didn't notice that.
Yep, no mosquitoes because they got a pretty big bat population.
Oh,
And it's not as humid as it is up here in the Dallas area or down in the Houston area because we lived in the Houston area for a while. But we lived in San Antonio. It was during the climax of the housing bubble, and so houses were just crazy expensive out there.
oh,
And then we moved back here because she got another job with another company. So we spent maybe 7 or 8 months in San Antonio, but it was nice. The boardwalk out there was great. There's tubing that you can do up there, and we went tubing one time, and she forgot to tell me about the waterfall, so I tipped over in my tube and I lost my wedding ring. And
oh
the
no.
year after, her and Matt went down to San Antonio, and before they left, he said, "I'm gonna try to find your wedding ring." And it was so cute because I mean I knew there was no way that he would find it, but just the thought that he wanted to try to find it was
Yeah.
just pretty cool.
Ah, that's cool.
Yeah, they changed because now you don't do nothing except when you're at work. You work at work, but here you don't do nothing.
That's funny. That's funny.
Yeah. Hmm.
What I wanted to say is that I'm a Southern California girl, and I haven't really experienced any of the seasons.
Hmm.
And then not until just last year when we moved here to Lake Tahoe, and we're here, and I experienced my first winter, and just this past winter. And
Hmm.
it was the thing that amazed me the most about snow is, I don't know if this is the same in other places, but it's so quiet. Everything just stops and it's just so quiet and it's so peaceful. It was one of the things I had never really experienced before, going outside and not hearing any traffic and not hearing anything.
Hmm.
All the animals are sleeping, and um, it was, everyone's inside their homes and they're not out and about, with barbecues and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And in Southern California and in some of the warmer climates, that's how it is all the time. It's just loud, there's always something going on day and night because there's nothing to stop you. And it seems like the snow, besides just being acoustically absorbent, it it just stops everybody and you have to slow down. And it was one of the things I really liked about winter, and I think it's slowly becoming my favorite season.
Yeah, and that's a good point, dude. That's a good point too, because it almost requires that you become a little more reflective. And in our fast-paced society where everybody is so fast doing everything, you have all these traffic jams because people are trying to get ahead of each other just so they can save 10 seconds of time to get wherever they're going. People forget to slow down and to comprehend that life is not just about getting life is not just about getting to a destination. It's about enjoying the journey along the way.
Right.
And in the winter, when you're just outside and you don't hear any of that other noise, gosh, there's so much noise, but in the winter it's all quiet and it gives you a little more of a chance to pause and just reflect and just be and not always necessarily have to be doing.
Right. And not have to think about stuff.
Yeah.
When there's all that noise going on, it just seems to perpetuate a lot of thought as well.
Yeah, I wrote a song. It's going to be on a compilation on the Cerebral Label website. It's a track called The Space Between the Thoughts. And I was reading an article where somebody was talking about that, and it had something to do with meditation and really trying to be in the space between your thoughts and stuff like that. And I always thought that was a pretty cool idea, so I decided to write a song about that. And it's done with piano, and I see what else did I use in that? I know I used piano and some other things, but then I reversed the piano, then ran it through a resonant filter, and then just mixed it with the original. So it's going backwards and forwards at the same time. And it's got this really weird, trippy sound to it because of the different effects that I put on there. It's like it's going backwards in the distance.
I bet that is really weird. I'd have to listen to that.
Yeah, I'll hook you up with a copy of it
Okay. Okay.
because I don't know when the album's going to be out. I'll send you a link because I think it's like a three hour album. My piece is like 12 minutes, but there's going to be a lot of really cool music on there by a lot of artists. So I'll send you a link. You'll probably
Cool.
see it in my Twitter timeline, but just to be sure, I'll DM you
Okay.
the link to that when it comes out.
Okay. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
Yeah. And thank you for being on my show tonight, Scott. I really appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. It was really fun, and I'm looking forward to when we can do another interview in
Yeah, I
October
wanted
when
to yeah, I wanted to ask you if you wanted to go ahead with that collaboration for a Halloween show.
yeah, that'll be cool
Cool.
because yeah, that'll be to promote my Halloween album because I try to come out with a Halloween album every year.
And is this one the one that's going to be called Plagues of Egypt?
Well, it's just called Plagues,
Oh, it's
but
just called Plagues.
yeah, but it's inspired by the plagues of Egypt.
Okay. Okay. And what are the plagues of Egypt?
From the Old Testament, from the book of Exodus,
Yes.
it's when Moses was going to lead the Israelites out of Egypt,
Okay.
and the Pharaoh, the plagues of Egypt. What is it? I think it's Exodus. Is it 20? Maybe chapters 20 through 23 or something like that.
I just barely started getting into the Bible, so a lot of this information is new to me.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I mean, I grew up Catholic, and then I went to a Southern Baptist university, and then I went to a Catholic graduate school, and then I got into the New Age and all this other stuff. But now I'm more of a deist. The belief that there is a God, but it's more like he's the watchmaker. He created the universe, but just left it to run on its own with no real intervention. Because the whole notion of a personal relationship with a God is just something I could never comprehend, and, but that gets into a whole nother thing.
Yeah.
But I'm inspired by a lot of different texts and a lot of different things, music, everything from classic literature to uh, political events to outer space.
Yeah, outer
Yeah,
space, for sure. The outer space, you
especially
definitely.
Neptune.
Neptune.
Yep,
Okay,
especially
what is
Neptune.
it about Neptune?
Well, it's just a really cool planet. I don't know what it is about Neptune, but I wonder if it's because I remember when I was a kid, I had a dream one time that me and my family were on a spaceship to Neptune, and I was cold and I needed a blanket. That's all I remember about it, but I just always liked Neptune, and there's this collaboration I did with GM Slater, who you mentioned long song titles,
Uh-huh.
and I get the idea for long song titles from a couple of different places. I originally borrowed the idea from Toaster, who created an album called Epiphany, and the album was, since it's ambient, the song titles need to tell a story.
Yes.
And so I got the idea to use longer song titles originally from him, and then I expounded on it more as I ran into the work of people like GM Slater with his Occurrences in Rain project, and then later on with Wings of an Angel, who is one of my favorite people to collaborate with. I think we've got 5 or 6 collaborations. We've got 3 of them out now. Another one will be coming out in August,
Wow.
October, and then December. And then him and I with Sevenism, we've got a noise album coming out January 1st, 2017. So we're going to begin the year with some noise. Um, so that'll be cool.
How do you find, okay, I'm going to put this into the show because I wanted to ask you this question. How do you find the time to be so prolific with, I mean, you have so much work out there already and you just continue to dish it out. And like, how do you find the time to put out so much work?
I'm a stay-at-home dad, and that in itself is a big job, but I just feel that it's important. And so, I sometimes I hear people say they don't have the time to do this and that and things like that. And I've always felt that if something's important to you, you'll find the time to do it. And when the kids are in school, I do a lot of work. I do a lot of creating work, but a lot of my creations happen at night after everyone goes to bed. I mean, I'm up till midnight, 1 a.m. a lot of times,
Hmm.
and then I got to get up at 6:30 to get the kids ready for school. And that because the wife works at home. Even when she's working at home, she doesn't do that much with the kids because she can't because she's working. When she's away, well, she's gone. But so a lot of my work happens after everybody goes to bed. Because I've always been a night owl. When I was a kid, my parents would say, "Don't stay up all night." I'd stay up all night anyway. I've always
Wow.
been a night owl, and the only reason I'm a morning person now is by necessity because of the kids. I don't want to wake up. I hate mornings. I don't. One of my friend Donovan said one day, he said, you shouldn't even talk to anyone until after you have your first cup of coffee.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of my work happens at night. Like when the kids are in school, um, I'll work on things. Mostly, I do my collaborations with other artists during the day, and I work on my own solo stuff at night.
Okay.
And finding people to collaborate with is always an interesting experience. Most of the time, it's me sending them an email asking them if they want to work with me on some music, and I steer them to my Bandcamp page. And there have been a couple of people who have collaborated with me once, and then they said they don't want to do any more collaborations. And you don't take it personally. That's just how it goes.
Hmm.
Um, but yeah, a lot of my collaborations, I just look for artists that I like, and after I listen to some of their music, I just send them an email and ask them if they want to work on something. And sometimes people will approach me to ask to do remixes. Like somebody wants me to do a remix. I've got this album out called The Green Mile Reinterpreted. It's on a noise label called Harsh Noise Movement. And basically, I just took the movie and ran it through a bunch of effects
Hmm.
and actually did the same with the soundtrack. Not every song, but a lot of the songs. And I created this 5 hour combination dark ambient noise album, and it's called The Green Mile Reinterpreted. And I got that idea from Corey Strand of Altar of Waste Records, who does the same thing with a lot of movies. He's done things with Pulp Fiction and a bunch of other stuff.
Hmm.
And my first noise album where I reinterpreted a movie was Child of Rage. And I also have a dark ambient version of that, which I sent a copy of that to the guy who originally did the soundtrack for the movie
Hmm.
because I found him on Twitter and he said, "Your music would have been perfect for that film."
Wow.
Um, because a lot like when people ask my wife what I do, she says he's a stay-at-home dad who writes music for horror movies.
Yeah.
It's so so I got this whole weird dichotomy thing going on, but the guy who I submitted the Green Mile reinterpretation to, he wants me to reinterpret Zodiac.
Oh, okay.
I've never seen it. I've heard about it, and I told him, I said, I don't know I know what the movie's about. I know it's about the Zodiac killer, but I've never seen it. But he wants me to do it anyway.
Hmm.
So I guess that's going to be one of my next projects.
Oh gosh. Yeah, that's you know, I agree that some of your music, like I was saying in the introduction, it can get pretty scary. And I think that it would be a great complement to a lot of movies. And I think indie horror movie creators could, use a lot of your music for their projects. Um, but at the same time, like I was saying, you do have other works that are they're just really like I was saying, like they give you more of that overview effect. They're really meditative and really like when I was listening to that uh, uh, Polar Night on Titan. Um, when I was listening to that, I put on the headphones and I was just relaxing, and I kind of just went into this other state of mind, and my body felt very relaxed, and then there were these weird sounds that all of a sudden started coming out. I heard voices, but I couldn't really hear them at the same time. And they were there, but they weren't there. And it's really hard to describe. I want to encourage the listeners to listen to your music because it definitely um, it takes you on little journeys.
Well, thank you. And I think those voices, I think that was Johnny Darko's contribution. And I asked him, I was like, dude, what did you do for this? And some of these dudes don't like to reveal anything
Yeah, yeah.
about anything at all. Like Grove of Whispers, the dude who, John Toker, he's another still stream DJ,
Okay.
and his music is really cool too. And we did one collaboration. It's more like where he took two of my drones and featured it. It's an album called Blue Harvest, but his music is really good too. But he will not tell you anything about how he does anything. And sometimes I wonder if I tell too much
Hmm.
about how I do stuff because then I wonder if it means that there's really no more mystery. So I don't know, but maybe not. Maybe I haven't done that. But
No, I don't think so because I think that the art form it comes from that person. So,
yeah,
you know,
I remember, and I don't know how long we have or whatever, but I remember when I was talking with my wife about this, my music and stuff, and she's like, "Oh, anybody can just hold down notes on a keyboard." I
right.
was like, "Okay, then you hold down notes on a keyboard and come up with this kind of work." She said, "Yeah, but then you have to do the post production." I'm like, "No, you've got to do all of it
Yep.
because it's all interrelated." And she actually said something about I just lay a brick on a keyboard, and I actually recorded one album, which is really just that. I took my black hole eventide space pedal that I actually didn't I actually don't use it because I got the plug-in now.
Okay.
So I need to try to sell it. So if anybody wants to buy a black hole universal or black hole eventide plug-in or pedal, I
Okay.
have one for sale. I don't have any pictures of it, but you can go on and see what it looks like. Um, but I actually laid that across the keys and just recorded it for like 3 hours while I played with different knobs. And I called it medication interval because it was after she had foot surgery and I was administering her drugs every 3 or 4 hours. It was actually supposed to be 4 hours, but Leah came in and messed it up, so I just left it at three. But the intervals for medication administration became at 3 hours at some point anyway, so it still works.
That's so funny.
Um, so so I just let the keys play whatever they were playing, whatever the notes were. I think it was all black notes.
Uh-huh.
And every once in a while I would just come in there and play around and twiddle some knobs and things like that. And then I decided to make an 18-hour version simulating like what it would be for like a whole waking day on pain medication. And I use a lot more plugins for that one and did a lot more of different mixing and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I'll release the 3 hour version first and then maybe release the 18-hour version later.
Yeah, I don't think I would have the patience to do the kind of work that you do because it it takes to do drone music, I think it definitely takes that that level of patience.
It does, but you know what's funny is like on the other hand, sometimes I think I have a little bit of an attention deficit disorder going on because I get bored with certain things after a while.
Hmm.
So that's why I have to move on and do other things. And eventually I always come back to the drone, but I do these political albums, I do like all these other things
Hmm.
and do the albums where I play around with different samples and stuff like that. But I think the drone is probably my home base. But I just have to go out and explore and do new things. I told somebody once I was going to do like a country album. I don't actually think I can do that. I don't know. That'd be hard.
Yeah. I've heard some country music out there. It just sounds like that band in a box. Have you heard of that? Yeah.
Gosh, that's like from the
Yeah.
90s, isn't it?
That's but that's what a lot of it sounds like
It
to
sounds
me.
like. Yeah, there are some like country sounds on my keyboard. One of them is I actually made a song with some of those country sounds and putting it through some different effects, and I think I called it "Wandering Through a Multicultural Street Fair in a Psychedelic Trance."
Oh my gosh.
Um, that's on the midnight, some of the Midnight Radio compilation as well. The short version is. There's a long version that'll come out sometime.
See, that's what I mean. It's just the amount of work that you've put out already is a lot. And then you
Yeah.
have this backlog, and then you have these upcoming projects. It's just amazing to me, and it's a really really good inspiration for me. It's something that I really need to be doing more of. I need to be doing more of my music. And I have written a lot of stuff, but I haven't done the recording yet. And I feel like I'm finally in a place here where I can start to record, and I'm really looking forward to that and putting out some new stuff.
Oh, that'll be cool.
But yeah, you are definitely an inspiration to me. So thank you so much.
Well, thanks.
Yeah. And so, yeah, thank you for joining me tonight. And I look forward to our Halloween show and chatting with you again and online in, before Halloween. So
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on the show. I appreciate the opportunity to be interviewed.
yeah, you're welcome.